What is up, guys? This is Godzilla Suplex, and welcome to today's episode where I'll be discussing one of my favorite teams in the NBA right now. This team has changed its culture since last year and now are one of the prime contenders to get to the finals out of the East. And yes, I'm talking about the Miami Heat. And can they make the NBA Finals this year with the way they've been playing? But first, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also hit the notification bell so you get a notification every time I make a video. And also hit my podcast wherever podcasts are available. It is the Godzilla Suplex podcast where I talk about all kinds of sports subjects. So now let's get into the topic. The Miami Heat sit in the second place in the East, 30-13. Super impressive record. These guys have made a major come up. Kendrick Nunn, James Johnson getting in shape and finally getting in the rotation. Jimmy Butler, Duncan Robinson. These guys are acting savage right now. No more person who has improved is Bam Bam Adebayo. I know I almost botched his name. But Bam Bam Adebayo has been just savage this year. He has upped his numbers in every category. Even though he had a great year last year, this is the coming out party for Bam Bam. And Jimmy Butler has just completely changed the culture around Miami. But what is my prediction for them going forward? Can they make the finals? And I know this is a very important question. You know, you got Boston, you got Toronto, you got all these teams looming for that title. And especially you got the Bucks fronting the head in the East. And it's very easy to forget about this scrappy team coming straight out of Miami. But let's compare who would make the playoffs today. Let's compare Miami to all these other teams. So if the playoffs were to start today, which I think in the East is pretty clear who's going to make the playoffs, the first team they would have to match up with is the Orlando Magic, a very great defensive team which has their own Terrence Ross, Nikola Vucevic, Aaron Gordon. This team compared to the Miami Heat is a slow burn version of Miami because you got Markelle Fultz coming up and finally getting that triple-double breakthrough in that body of LeBron, which was hilarious. But them compared to the Heat are further along with the progress. And unlike the Heat, Orlando doesn't really have a defensive identity. Yes, they play good defense. Yes, that's what they strive towards, but they're still a team in development. Whereas Miami has already caught their identity, know what they're supposed to be doing. Guys are committed to their roles, and they have a leader pushing them to be better who has that deep playoff experience. I mean, Jimmy Butler's pretty much done everything but make the finals, and he's called out teammates, and he holds his team accountable, and he holds himself accountable for winning and setting the pace for the team. Whereas Orlando, Vucevic plays great, but he plays independently great from the rest of the pieces. Very rarely does Orlando get on the same page with all of its players, and Nick Vucevic really doesn't set the pace leader-wise. He's just there contributing, and he relies on the other pieces to help out and kind of give that team effort. So I could see them easily beating them in 4 or 5 games, easily sweeping them as Markelle can have a good game, Aaron Gordon can have a good game, Vucevic can have a great game, but can they all put it together to put together a consecutive amount of games to beat Miami? I just cannot see that at all. What Miami's intensity and Jimmy Butler ultimately be the difference, as he can shut down any guard in the backcourt. And there goes them. So who would they face in the second round? Well, we have two, teams who are equally as good. Yeah, because the second faces 4 or 5. So they would face Boston or Philly, who are currently sitting in the 4th and 5th place. This is a tough matchup, I know. When you compare Boston, they're a team much like Miami, having a identity in their coach, in their play style, having Kemba Walker who perfectly fits that style, and then having players to back them up like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And when I compare them, and I would just assume that they would beat Philly, and let's just compare it to both Philly and Boston. Philly also has, Embiid, but they're a little bit dysfunctional, and we don't know if they're going to get together this season. They have Ben Simmons, but I would have to say they are almost the exact opposite in the Miami Heat in their chemistry. Two guys that don't really fit together in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Then you have a whole bunch of guys who don't really necessarily 100% know what their role is on the team. They're just very talented guys. The only person that we know is guaranteed to show up is probably Al Horford because of his just vast amount of playoff experience. So comparing them to Philly, I think they could beat Philly in a hard 6-game series just because Miami knows everything they're supposed to do. They know who their leader is. They know who they're going to get the ball to. And they have good spacing and good decision making and IQ plays, which can be sorely lacking for Philly in tough moments. Then we compare it to Boston, which would be even a harder matchup. I think that goes 7 games. Jason Tatum's an absolute monster. Jaylen Brown's playing great this season. But compare them to Miami. Whereas, multiple guys, you don't know really who's going to give you those points. But Jaylen Brown has been known to fade in playoff situations. Jason Tatum, we know is going to be there. You could get some support from Gordon Hayward. But still, this team is in their first year of the process. It's really going to come down to the matchup between Kemba Walker and Jimmy Butler. And the reason why I really take the Heat is because the Heat, even though they don't have as many consistent offensive pieces, their defense is great. They can control the ball down low. They can get great shots. They have great players that are willing to sacrifice any way, anyhow to win. Whereas Boston, they had to play like a sort of a slick style. And when you get really gritty with them, I think you can take them out of their game, especially with some of their lackadaisical shooting and sometimes inconsistent play. So I think Miami could get out of there with any of them in a 7-game series. Then we have, as I assume, who would be in the conference finals to meet them, the Bucks, which at that point, because if we look at it, Bucks are going to be Brooklyn without Kevin Durant, and the Bucks are going to be Toronto or Indiana. Now, Indiana could put up a pretty good fight. In Toronto, those are two scrappy teams, but I can't see them beating the Bucks. They're going to make it back to the conference finals. And here's the thing. I love Giannis. Giannis is a great player. But I would have to say, Giannis, when they built that great wall around him and having one of the worst second options in the league in Chris Middleton, I see Miami overpowering them by building a wall around Giannis. They don't exactly have the experience to deal with Giannis on that level, but in shutting down the backcourt of Chris Middleton and Eric Bledsoe, I think they could do it. I think they could stop everybody but Giannis, and that's really all you need to do against the Milwaukee Bucks, because their second cast can play good, but when they're forced to play half-court defense, they sorely lack. And we saw that with the Toronto Raptors. And, they dropped 4 games in a row. You just can't do that in a scenario. And this team is almost exactly the same. So if they go up against Jimmy Butler, who's a cold-blooded killer, Duncan Robinson, these guys who are playing super consistent, I could see their game translating into the playoffs with their great defense. I think the question has been answered that, yes, the Miami Heat can make the NBA Finals compared to the competition they're going up against in the playoffs this year, or potentially. I mean, really, the Bucks, great team, but when you have forced them to play half-court defense, they fail. Boston, Philly, great. Boston can have inconsistent offensive droughts, while the Philadelphia 76ers chemistry is just so off, and they're just a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. That's why I think the Miami Heat just have the best chance, and they're the best, I feel like, all-around team other than Boston in the whole playoffs that could really make a run at the finals, maybe possibly lose to the Lakers and the Clippers in the finals if they have no injuries. But they are a championship mentality team. They just may lack 1 or 2 pieces to get there, but I think this year their ceiling is very high. But guys, that is the end of the video. If you love it, hit that like button, also hit the subscribe button, also hit the notification bell if you want to get a notification every time I make a video. And also, wherever podcasts are listened to, or wherever they're put up, I have a new podcast, the Godzilla Suplex Podcast, where I talk about NBA, mixed martial arts, and gaming subjects every week. Go check that out and subscribe to this so you can get notifications for that too. But guys, this has been the best GOAT era in NBA news. Sign out, guys. See y'all next time.